Hey guys, this is Nia. Welcome back to my channel. I'm here with 3 other Christmas card designs. These are super easy, so if you're a beginner who would like to start painting with watercolor, this would be a good start. Let's get straight to the first design, which is these Christmas lights. As usual, I'm going to draw it out to make it easier to understand, because I know sometimes watercolor may look a little bit abstract. Let's get to the shapes of the lights. I'm going to make mine somewhat of a lemon shape, but you can also do ovals or circles for these lights depending on the look you're going for or what shape is easiest for you to paint if you're still new to this. For the hangers, I'm going to do a rough oval shape or a rectangle, then a circle on top of the oval, and that's it for the light. You also want the lights to be hanging from a line. You can change the line color to say gold or fun metallic colors, or even use a small string or rope to give a nice effect and a mixture of mediums. But for this demo, I'm just going to stick with a simple black watercolor paint. You can paint straight on paper for this painting, but because I'll be alternating the light colors, it's easier for me to draw it out first, so I don't have to think about the spacing in between certain colors. I'm going to do 3 lines of lights for this painting. I'm doing a diagonal line which is slightly curved so it doesn't look too stiff, but if you want the page to look more full, you can also add more lines of where the lights will be hanging from. I'm going to use 6 colors for this painting. I have black for the line and hangers, and for the lights I have red, yellow, green, blue, and purple. As usual, you can pick any colors that you want. I'm going to use black first for the line, and be sure to use a small brush when painting a long line because you don't want to suddenly lose control and accidentally making a really thick mark in the middle of it. If you decide to paint the rounded shapes without initially doing the outline first, I'll give you a hint. It's easier to paint 2 down strokes from the top left and the top right and then join the lines together at the bottom to create the outline rather than going full circles with your brush if you're painting just a small circle, because if you're not yet comfortable with your brush, the bristles might flick in ways you don't want it to unless you have very light hands and good control just on the tip of the brush. But if you're drawing out the outline first like I am, you can just color it in. Let's get to painting the lights now. Basically, we're going to alternate the colors, and since I will be having 5 colors for my lights, I picked my color first and I decided to use red, and then I'm going to count to 5 after the light that I've just painted, and we're going to be painting the red again on the 5th one. This way you don't have to constantly change your colors. This is what I meant before by outlining at first, so you can count the spacing. If not, you would have to change the paint for every single light bulb, and it will be a bit more time consuming and more wasteful, I think. For the next couple of lines, I want to continue to alternate the colors, so I'm going to pick one of the colors that isn't red and work from there, and we're going to do the same thing for the rest of the lights. Once you're done coloring all of the lights, I'm going to use a thick consistency black paint again, the same thing that I used for the line, to paint the hangers, and repeat this for every single light. I also forgot to mention to put a line on top of the circle for the hanger so you can connect the lights to the line. Try to also use a small brush for this since the shapes that you're making are very small. To finish off this painting, I want to add some accents to the light. I'm just going to paint some random dots coming out of the light to represent sparkles coming from the light, or however you want to interpret it yourself. So I'm just going to paint all of the dots according to the color of the lights, and I'm going to do this randomly with different sizes and shapes. And last but not least, I'm just going to write happy holidays or anything else you want. You can also pick your own font. I personally like cursives, but since I've already done that for 2 other cards that I made, I'm just going to write it all in uppercase. This is completely optional. You may also fill the whole page with more lights if you want to, and that's it for this card. For the second painting, we're going to do a baby penguin card. It's based on a tutorial that I've already made a couple of weeks ago, and this is a larger version of it, which includes a bit more detail. It follows pretty much the same steps and the same colors that I used for the penguin as the tutorial. So I'd advise you to check out the tutorial if you're interested in this and you haven't already, where I take you from drawing to painting the penguin freehand. For this card, since I'm making a larger version of the penguin, I'm much more comfortable with drawing out the outline first with pencil, and I use a mixture of black, of gray, and ultramarine blue for the body of the penguin. And all I do is paint the whole area of the body and the wings, and while the paint is still wet, I also added some thicker consistency paint from the bottom up to give it a smooth gradation. For the scarf and the beanie, I used red. The red that I used in particular is Rose Madder. I just thought it's appropriate since it's Christmas, and I also thought it would give a nice pop of color from the grays of the penguin, so I just painted all around the scarf area and also adding a thicker consistency on the scarf hidden under the top layer, so it has a bit of contrast in value. I also added some stripes to the scarf design, and I use a mixture of Crimson Lake, which is darker, mixed with a bit of black so it contrasts more with the base color. Make sure though that the base color is completely dry first before you add on any of the details, or else your paint will start bleeding off like mine did. I'm going to add some more of the gray under the scarf as the shadow, and then move on to the beanie, which I'm just going to paint the exact same color as the scarf so it's matching. And then I painted the black off the penguin's head, which is a thick consistency black. So remember, when you want a complete black color, you should use less water, or else it might look a bit translucent and it'll turn out looking gray instead against the paper. While I have the black still on my brush, I also painted the feet, and then continuing the feet to the rest of the body and then smoothing it out with the rest of the colors so there's no harsh lines. Once the beanie is completely dry now, I added some of the details, which is the lines using the same color that I used for the scarf. It's a mixture of the Crimson Lake and black. Then I colored the bottom lining of the beanie too, and then also added a glaze on top since I found that the color of the beanie isn't as red as I want it to be when it dries. I also decided to add a little pom-pom on top of the beanie, and I wanted to look fluffy, so I just paint strokes from inside out to create a fluffy circular shape, followed with the lines on the beanie again as added detail of the lining. And as usual, I'm too impatient to wait for it to completely dry, so it ended up bleeding out again, but I didn't mind so much. I thought it kind of gives it a fluffy look anyway. After painting the pom-pom, I also decided to make the body of the penguin fluff out a little bit, so I decided to paint some soft fur sticking out of some parts of the tummy and the wings, but don't go too overboard with this or else your penguin might look furry instead. I'm going to add the details on the face now. For the eyes, I'm just going to do 2 dots and diamond shape for the beak. I'm also going to add final touches of the shadows and things like that from the scarf by using the darker red, and mix some Queen Opera with Chinese white to make a soft pastel pink for the blushes on the cheeks. To finish off the penguin, I'm going to paint a heart on the chest area so it sticks out with the same pastel pink, and I also added some of the fluff that I added to the rest of the body. Last but not least, I wanted to add some snow falling down, so I mixed cerulean blue with gray of gray, and I painted circular negative shapes and then smoothing out the edges so it disappears into the background. I did a very thin consistency here because I wanted the transition to be nice and smooth, but in the end I decided to do a second layer of the snow off camera because it wasn't visible enough on the first layer. You can add any text you want here. I'm just going to do a simple Merry Christmas with my brush pen, but since I'm bad at hand lettering, as I mentioned before in my previous video, I did an outline with pencil first to make sure I like the placement and the spacing. And we have just completed the second card. Let's move on to the next one. The last design is by far the easiest in my opinion. It only requires 3 separate images that will be made into a Christmas pattern. The first thing I'm going to draw is this pine leaf cutting, basically just one long line in the middle and straight branches sticking out from each side. And this is something that you can play around with the angle a bit. Try to rotate it around so it looks randomized on the paper. The second object are cherries or berries. I don't really know what these are called, but all you need to paint are just the circles and a twig shape. The last element I'm going to show you are mistletoe leaves. You can draw this like any leaves and branches, but with the tip of the leaves being slightly rounded. Now let's get to painting these. For the pine leaf cuttings, I used a mixture of ultramarine blue and viridian to create a deep, dark bluish green color, and I'm going to paint it as I've drawn and spreading it across the whole page and randomizing the rotation of the object. For this whole painting, I would recommend you to use a fairly small brush, something that you can easily control because we will be making really small objects and we'll be using the tip of our brush a lot. So make sure that you're comfortable with your brush and maybe try to use either a liner brush or between a size 0 to a size 2 brush. We're going to paint the next element now, which is the mistletoe leaves and branch. I mixed in sap green and deep yellow to create a warmer green to differentiate it from the previous element that we've just painted. And again, we're just going to place this evenly all across the page, randomizing the placement and the angles so this looks more cohesive with the rest of the elements. The last element I'm going to paint are the red berries. I'm going to spread out the berries first and then do the twigs later, but if you're more comfortable with painting the twigs first, you can also do that. For some people who aren't able to imagine spacing and placing too well, painting the twigs first would actually make this easier, so I would actually recommend it. For the red berries, I use rose madder and sepia for the twig. And that's it. Those are the steps for this pattern. It's probably the easiest one in my opinion compared to the rest of the cards that I did. I decided to post this even though it's already so close to Christmas, but these are super simple as I mentioned, so it's something that you can come up with in like 10 minutes of your spare time. If you want to look at other designs, I've also created a playlist which I've included these cards plus the Christmas paintings that I did last year, so maybe you can check that out if you're still looking for some ideas to paint. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this last minute compilation of Christmas card designs. You can technically change the context of these by changing the text too, so whichever you're going to use it for, I hope you guys have a great Christmas. If you did end up painting any of the card designs that I did, don't forget to tag me on Instagram so I can take a look. It's at IG_nyanyani. I will leave everything in the description box. Thank you again for watching till the end, and I'll see you at the next one. Bye!